Let's start off with our first DLC character of Dragon Ball FighterZ, Bardock, which, as we all remember, was an absolute menace back in Season 1 and has since been largely irrelevant for many years competitively, and let's see if this patch actually does anything to help him. The first change to go over is to a standing medium attack. Previously, this move was -4 on block, so it was a safe stagger option, but not as safe as you would like it to be. If you whiff this in neutral, it had 31 total frames. Now let's take a look at standing medium attack's new delay. It's 2 frames less, so now it's -2 on block, meaning it should be more effective for Bardock to stagger this tool and go for dash blocks to then safely be able to block the opponent's reversal normal. It also means that it's only 29 frames on whiff as opposed to 31 in neutral, or in a post-reflect situation where I think this is more likely to come up. Crouching medium attack also has a buff, this one to the startup. Previously, it was a 10-frame low-medium option, so if Bardock tried to mix you with this using a super dash mix like this, then he was trolling, since pretty much you could react to him landing and then block the low in time. He would generally have to rely on mixing you with things like 2L. Which, would certainly work, but it meant that, his high-low mix-up game meant that, either way he was swinging at you, he was getting a light starter. Crouching medium attack is now faster, at 9 frames startup. So it's a single frame of difference, but this could mean that it's able to work in some combo routings where it would be a little stricter to use before. But I think it also means it's sort of right at that threshold where you could actually use this as a high-low mix-up with Super Dash. That 1 frame may seem like a very small difference in here, but maybe it's possible. Let's go ahead and stress test this. I have 2 recordings. The first recording, Bardock will do a super dash assist and then land and go for an empty 2M low. The second one, he'll super dash call assist and then do a delayed air dash overhead. If this is a true 50-50, then when I do a fuzzy block and transition from a standing block to a crouching block, I should be able to block the low pretty much every single time, but then the overhead's going to open me up. Then, if I want to start blocking the overhead, I have to stay stand blocking, and then the low should be able to catch me. That blew up my fuzzy block. I'm still fuzzy blocking here, so, I'm never getting hit by the low, but the overhead's starting to cook me. Transition from a high to low. Open up again. Now I'm starting to look for when he lands, and it looks like, at least off of this recording, I still am able to block that low, almost on reaction. But I think I'm just autopiloting my fuzzy guard. Either way, I do think it means that, you could potentially use it in this circumstance. If you find that your opponent's not getting opened up by the low, maybe just go back to using your 2L. After all, that is a guaranteed, high-low 50-50. So I'm not sure if the crouching medium is necessarily fast enough for this, but it's certainly going to be better at using this, and if it turns out it is actually a real 50-50, well then you can go ahead and do this with your Super Dash mix to get medium starters off your low instead of lights. Now let's take a look at the light version of Rebellion Spear. During the medium auto combo, if you use this version of the move, then the opponent will be blasted back, and there really wasn't a whole lot that you could do with it here. And in fact, you could get a wall bounce in the corner, but good luck using it. And if you try to do something like this, you weren't able to get a backdash pickup in mid-screen off of this either. Let's take a look at the new hit stun on the medium auto combos version of Light Rebellion Spear. It's a little longer, as you can tell. So if we actually use this near the corner, you're actually able to use this to get a side swap. Kind of feels like, what's the point of that? But, I guess if you wanted to, you could use this and then go into EX Lariat. And then try to do something from there, but kind of doesn't really seem like too good of a use for it. It's not like all of a sudden I can backdash and pick up this hit. However, it does mean if I'm closer to the corner, I do have the option just to use it to launch the opponent just like that. So maybe there's some situations where this is usable. It should also mean that it's more reliable for you to combo into your level 1. But I'm pretty sure that worked as intended before. The other change to look at with Rebellion Spear is an increase to the stun time on mid-air hit. Previously, if you did routes like this, it would be very difficult for you to actually get any sort of meterless follow-up from this Rebellion Spear. I know that Shao, a prolific YouTube content creator for all kinds of really crazy links in Dragon Ball FighterZ that aren't necessarily competitive match practical, but certainly a cool demo and looking at what some super high level execution could look like for a character. Outside of making the Rebellion Spear hit meaty, you weren't able to get follow-ups. This basically meant that there was some limited utility from Rebellion Spear in a lot of Bardock's combo routing, as well as converting hits with it from neutral like this. Now let's look at the new hit stun on the light version of Rebellion Spear against mid-air opponents. About 22 frames of advantage to work with here, so there's a couple more frames of hit stun going on. In a vacuum, there's a lot of different things happening here with Bardock. So if we do a longer combo with Bardock, you know, you should always be able to link into your level 1 supers off of this move now. So this should mean that regardless of your hit stun scaling, unless things get really crazy with it, you can always tack on a lariat for a little bit more meter and damage before you go into your supers. However, there's also another change that's really cool that has a lot of implications for Bardock's combo routing. Now, I mentioned the Shao combos a little bit earlier because what used to be some very obscure combo theory that required some timings to get the lariats to hit meaty, you can now just do with some pretty basic setups and a couple of crucial execution checks or delays. So let's go ahead and look at the first method that I've learned, which is the Tiger Knee method. So if you do a ground lariat kind of like that, actually it still works, that's crazy. Ground lariats like this, they usually hit just a little bit too soon for you to work. And of course, if you delay the lariat, then you're not really going to have any luck here. And then, of course, once you get the opponent airborne like this, then things get a little bit tricky. So if you want to make this consistent, you can just do a Tiger Knee lariat where you're jumping and then doing your light lariat to then get the follow-up. If you jump too high, so you're a little slow in your execution, you can mess up the loop. You can also do this by doing core circle forward, ending with a jump input to then delay your light button press so that Bardock will go airborne like that, as you can see. And then you should be able to get the timing pretty well. Of course, if you fail it, you'll get a super jump just like that and drop the combo. That's one style of doing the loops. Let's check out the other method. So now let's look at basically using particular strings in your combos to auto-set the dummy's height, where you only need to do a simple delay, if even that, to get these light Rebellion Spear loops to work. So if you have Smash Launcher, you can do 5H after any given point in your combo to then go into 5S and then your light lariat. If you delay stuff like this, it's getting a little too complicated. Generally, it's like a small delay on your 5S, and then you're going for it. Like, you should mess around with this and get the timing down for yourself. Once you use that Smash Launcher, say with something like Tyrant Lancer, then it's pretty simple to set up the loop. I do 2M, 5S, 5H, delay into the Rebellion Spear. And then I can pretty much repeat it. And with some practice, you'll be able to execute it several times. The kind of key I look for is when the dummy changes their animation in their falling period. So try to time your Light Rebellion Spear around the time they change their animation. You can get a couple of loops of this before the hit stun decay gets too high, and therefore you have to cut out your loops. This will kind of become like a new cornerstone of some Bardock combo routing, and just adds to like another option. As always, if these are too difficult for you, or you're having trouble learning them, or you need to pivot in the middle of a match, you can always just go back to his medium lariat loop variations. Those still work just fine, but I do think that they are suboptimal compared to the new loops right now. Let's take a look at the heavy version of Rebellion Spear now. There's been some adjustments to the knockback on the first attack's mid-air hit, as well as increased stun time on the attack's second hit. So we'll go ahead and look at this from a raw hit, and then look at it off the Ki Blast, which launches the opponent. Previously, you could tell that it was pretty hard for Bardock to pick up anything off of this attack. especially solo, you generally had to rely on using particular assists in order to pick up anything here. Right? So, just as a demonstration or an example. I complained about this before because whereas so many other characters just get a free pickup off of their EX moves thanks to getting a smash launcher of some kind, and getting really good damage for it, Bardock has been archaically limited in terms of what he's able to get solo. Yeah, you could go for the launcher right here, but unless you were right next to the corner, you really got nothing off of this. Again, it kind of felt just like frustratingly limited and sort of like this archaic design philosophy of old Season 1 of Dragon Ball. Now, considering how fast this Lariat move is, I don't mind if it's a little more reliant for Bardock to actually get pickups off of it. But I mean, there's so many more moves that do more damage, have more positive to them outside of speed that basically function as if they work in the same way. Like Gogeta 4's Lariat was an example I used in my previous Bardock video. It kind of just, highlighted the question to me of why play Bardock when everyone else in the cast has a better version of these kind of tools than what Bardock has. And it seems like Bandai is trying to make a step in addressing these shortcomings in this patch. Let's take a look at the new version of Heavy Rebellion Spear. Now let's take a look at Rebellion Spear's changes. So when it comes to the knockback on the first attack as well as the stun time on the second attack, all these come together to actually leave the opponent a little bit closer to you, and now you got about like 36 frames to work with, at least in terms of the dummy fully recovering. So it is tricky, but in some situations, you are able to run up and pick up combos without needing to invest into an assist. In fact, it's pretty easy for you to go into your light lariat option. Other options, though, well, you have to time them correctly to basically come out of your landing stun. As you can tell, your Raging Meteors don't quite reach, maybe with a little run forward. But yeah, not the medium version at least. And you don't really want to look at using the EX version because you're still spending a full bar to get this pickup. At closer ranges, your hit spacing is pretty much going to be the same as it was. Off a Ki Blast, it certainly is a little bit easier, I think, to try and run up and link a 5L here. But I don't mind, taking this many demonstrations just to show you that while it is possible, it is annoyingly finicky. You would just like it so that it's like, hey, cool, I can just run up and do this, right? For example, there's some situations or some ranges or just some execution things where you can actually just solo combo off of this now as Bardock. However, unlike so many other characters with moves like this, it's still just a little too finicky for my liking. Again, like if I walk forward a little bit from full screen and then do this, it feels pretty straightforward to do. But if I'm like far away from it, at true full screen, then it feels like the spacing bar that goes is just a little off. So you kind of have to like play around like these sweet spot ranges where you're actually able to get this link. And if you're too close, it feels like kind of the same situation to me. Still possible, though. So long as you get just close enough from this, you should be able to make it work. Unfortunately, if you're doing this off a Ki Blast, it's not like you have time to reposition, dash forward, and get that better range off of it. But if you do delay your cancel, you risk dropping it. But again, there's like something there, and it feels like you're finally taking a step in the right direction, Bandai, but it's just not the full step. I mean, just a few more frames of hit stun here, and all of a sudden, like Bardock's Lariat, it's finally kind of like feels like a modern-day Dragon Ball FighterZ special move, but it's just oddly finicky with the ranges that you need in order to really get this link. And even then, if you're in those ranges, it's still fairly inconsistent. I don't mind it, requiring like an assist more often than not to get the confirm, and in fact, it's way easier now to confirm off an assist. So, like, I genuinely don't mind that one. So, if you need to, if you're playing Bardock Point, which I think you should be, you can always just use an assist to pick it up. But it feels kind of frustrating where that feels like the most consistent and best way, when there's also this cool solo way of converting that's just outside of being, like, really tournament practical for us to really incorporate here. Like, I don't want to gamble dropping this combo in a tournament setting. Like, that would just feel very frustrating for me sort of play with it. So I hope that there could be some other buff to make this a little bit easier for Bardock to confirm solo off of. Now let's get into Raging Meteor, which has several changes going on to it. Each individual version of the move has a couple of adjustments to it, but all three of them have the following two changes to them. First, let's go ahead and look at the old chip damage on all these attacks. It was a pretty minuscule amount, as you can see, between the light, medium, and EX version. More so, it didn't really matter a whole lot since, you know, they now whiff on crouching opponents as well. So that's really like a weird thing to sort of increase. We'll go ahead and take a look at the new chip damage real quick. And here's the new chip damage. It's considerably noticeably higher now across all three versions. But again, it kind of just feels weird to give it this property. I know why they did it, because they're kind of trying to rework the move, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But again, against a crouching opponent, even that chip damage is considerably better on the final hit. So that's nice. And I say on a crouching opponent, you know, when all the other hits whiff. So it should be a little bit nice. Bardock gets a little bit more damage when the opponent blocks this move, which honestly is probably going to be a more common circumstance going forward, thanks to this other buff to Raging Meteor. More interesting is this new property that all of the moves had. Previously, these were basically just combo filler for Bardock and maybe like a very cheeky overhead mix-up tool. In neutral, they didn't really have any sort of utility. I mean, they're fairly stubby moves, took a long time to start up. And while, you know, you could jump at the opponent with, like, you know, this overhead, it really kind of just didn't really serve any other purpose. And again, one of Bardock's big issues is that in modern Dragon Ball FighterZ, there's so much more zoning going on and so much more strong, effective zoning. And so many other characters have been able to deal with it with projectile immunity or even ki blast immunity. And Bardock was left behind until this change to Raging Meteor. Now, I've been pretty vocal about the fact that Bardock has had an issue being zoned out thanks to the fact that none of his lariat attacks have any sort of projectile or ki blast invincibility on them. Given their range, I felt like, yeah, maybe buffing them to have some sort of projectile invincibility would be a little much, even if it was just ki blast, because these are pretty fast options. I mean, a 14-frame full-screen lariat that could be ki blast immune, I mean, that is a pretty powerful option, and even comparing to some other characters, like Labco, for example. If we turn on the enemy frame data, we can see that her lariat, even having ki blast properties, still connected at frame 26. So if you wanted to give Bardock's Rebellion Spears that same sort of property to them, you would have to look into dropping some sort of factor. Either make it so that you don't really get great confirms of it, or you slow them down, but their whole identity has been around them being a fast move. So what's Bandai's solution? Well, it's to give projectile invincibility to a different move in Bardock's kit. It's to Raging Meteor. So, if we actually stress test this now, not only is it immune to ki blast now, it's completely immune to projectiles as well. So this means that, you know, if you get close enough with Bardock, Bardock can just spin on you and attack you for this one. Now, there's some other buffs going on as well to justify this change. But, you know, now all of a sudden, Bardock, if he's able to get close enough to you, he can threaten projectile invincible options on a move that I never would have expected it on. So I have to give my hats off to Bandai here. This is a pretty creative buff and one that I am quite fond of. Let's look at other changes to Raging Meteor before we fully evaluate this. To supplement this change to Raging Meteor, there's a couple of other changes going on as well. The light version and the medium version share the following buff, where they now build more ki gauge. So previously, the light version would build you a little less than a quarter of a bar, and the medium version built you just about a quarter of a bar. So now, what is the new meter build on the light and medium version of Raging Meteor? It's just over a quarter of a bar for the light version, and about a quarter and half of a quarter of a bar a meter. So, like, you know, quarter and an eighth of meter. So it's actually not bad. And when you combine this with some other changes that we'll look at in a moment, Bardock actually has some seriously high meter building routes in his combo structure now. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the second change that applies to the medium and heavy version of Raging Meteor, which has to do with the knockback on hit. Previously, you would get a bit of a ground bounce, but you generally would use this just to get an assist extension, especially in like the corner. And as you can tell, it could be a little bit finicky to even get that, and you would have to adjust your timing on that one. The same was true for the EX version. Again, if you were too late with your assist call, then it didn't work. This also meant that since Bardock was relying on using these for assist pickups, these were basically his combo enders. But now that they've been buffed to be neutral tools for Bardock, well, Bandai wants you to be able to get rewards for being able to counter your opponent's zoning. So they've adjusted the knockback on hit. Let's take a look at the new version. And so now let's fully explore the knockdown changes on the medium and the heavy version of Raging Meteor. It's a substantially higher ground bounce on both versions of the move. And if you play Super Saiyan Goku, well, you might know the outcome of this. Particularly off the EX version, Bardock can now solo convert off of this. And this is a pretty nice change that has, again, a lot of implications for Bardock's combo routing. Instead of necessarily using this as a combo finisher, you can use it in the middle of your combos to add on some extra bar build in them, helping you out. You can use this also towards the end of your combos to add that extra bar, keep your combos on the ground, and then get some very easy assist extensions with them. And of course, if you're using this from neutral, you can run up and convert off of your hits. However, just like that heavy Rebellion Spear I talked about, it does feel a little finicky. Right? It's not as just clean and simple as I would like it to be. And Bardock's normals kind of play a part in this. You know, because his mediums are so stubby, it's not like all of a sudden I'm getting the pickups here. You could kind of do a shortcut and do Light Lariat to always guarantee a pickup. But then, you know, you're also playing around with what assists that you have. Are they fast enough? Is your timing correct? Etc., etc. It is still an option for you to look forward to. The EX version definitely feels a little more consistent. But depending on your ranges, right? Like if I'm doing it from here, and I get the last hit, like Frieza just flies too far away for me to get this pickup. So even though, again, it's a step in the right direction for Bardock, if only the last hit of these meteors connect with Bardock, then you're kind of in trouble for actually getting your pickup. So you have to, you know, be aware of these ranges where you might get like a different ground bounce, or just the spacing is off so that you might not actually get the confirm for this hit. So again, it's just half a step forward in the right direction for Bardock. It's just finickier than I think it needs to be. And if you just adjusted the ground bounce on this hit, especially when only the last hit's connecting like this, so that the dummy or the opponent is a little closer to Bardock so you can always get the pickup, I think that this is fine, and this is a great change for Bardock. I just wish it was a little more consistent in terms of its behavior to get rid of this frustration, because as it is right now, this change being as finicky as it is, you know, gating my like confirms off this move, sure, I get Oki, but I could have gotten a full combo as well, and like Gogeta 4, he gets a full combo, he's getting damage, etc., etc., and the medium version too. Like, if you don't want me to get solo combos off of this consistently in mid-screen, okay, that's fine, but I would still, you know, like to be able to make sure that that's always happening off my EX version, right? So I do wish there was just a little bit more hit stun going on with these changes, or some slightly different behavior to make it easier for confirms. But again, a good change for Bardock, a step in the right direction. Push it a little more, Bandai. Please, you've done crazier, I promise. Tyrant Lancer has a couple of buffs as well. They increase the distance move as well as the amount of key gauge that it fills up. So let's take a look at the old properties. Pretty stubby, as you can tell. This is an awkward fraction to deal with, but it's just over like a third of a bar of meter here for Bardock. So if you did 3 of these, you built a full bar. And now let's look at Tyrant Lancer's new range and key build. Just a small step forward all of a sudden reaches. And it's a little over half a bar a meter as well for Bardock. This, combined with the changes to Raging Meteor, giving more bar as well, gives access to some huge meter bar builds for Bardock in his combo routing, and I'll show you some demonstrations that I've cooked up. So combining the meter increase to Raging Meteor as well as the new knockdown so you can actually get links off of it solo, as well as the buffs to Tyrant Lancer's meter build, Bardock can now do some combo routing that actually results in about 3 bars of meter built. With the right assist, you can pretty much add in a couple of repetitions of Tyrant Lancer, and every single time you do it, it's half a bar built. Using those two particular assists, I was able to build 3.5 bar off of a single combo for Bardock. I mean, that's pretty strong. All of a sudden, Bardock is consideration for a battery on your team as a point character, which I like. I kind of felt like with how he's been the last couple of years, he's always been a point character, and so now buffing his ability to build bar to keep up with some other of the battery characters, especially like in the corner route, is kind of a nice change for him overall. Now let's take a look at Riot Javelin. Previously, if you wanted to change the angle of the attack, you had to hold down forward or down up. And of course, whichever direction you held meant that you really got that version of the move to come out. I did up forward for the air version, and he fired it downwards. So if you did straight up or straight down, then the Riot Javelin itself would just fly forward. In addition to that, they buffed the stun time for the mid-air variation. So let's take a look at that. Pretty limited hit stun right there, and that was the straight ahead version. If we fired it straight downwards, well, you pretty much heard Frieza instantly tech. So if we add on a super to this, we can actually check it out. As you can tell, it was possible to get some supers to link here, but it could be tricky, especially if you were just a little bit late on your input. Now let's look at Riot Javelin's new behaviors. So instead of having to press diagonal forward or diagonal down, you can simply just hold up or down and change the angle of the attack. And it works for the aerial version as well. So this is pretty much in line with some other supers, like Super Saiyan Goku's Kamehameha super, where you can change the behavior by holding up or down. So that's nice that it's in line with those other supers, though it is funny that the tooltip is still not updated, so it will still read diagonal forward or diagonal upwards, but, you know, you can still kind of just do up or down. Additionally, there's more hit stun on the air version. Let's take a look at that. A little bit more time there, so it should mean that you're going to be able to do your air DHCs with a little more leeway, as well as spiking them downwards. In fact, as you could tell from me going into Broly, there's actually a pretty substantial ground bounce for you here. So pretty much you should be able to get all hits of like any sort of level 3 that previously you might have had to summon early in order to get the full connection on. A nice quality of life buff that should just result in some higher DHC output damage for Bardock. Bardock's other level 1, Saiyan Spirit, also has a change. That was the old stun time of the move itself, looking at with a frame advantage of about 18 frames. So if you wanted to use this for like maybe some sort of Oki setup or something like that, well, you know, aside from the opponent just, you know, teching upwards or in air, if they decided to do a downwards tech from midair, well, then that situation would happen. You'd give up the corner, and the opponent would be able to anti-air you, just as like a demonstration of like the stun time to it. I think there was some combo routing where if you tried to go from this level 1 into other supers, or even into his level 1, that it could drop at some very high hit stun scaling decays. I'm not entirely sure about that. And as you can see, going from the corner into full screen using Riot Javelin as like or Saiyan Spirit as a reversal of some sort, you still got the combo off of this. Now let's look at Saiyan Spirit's new stun time. A little more substantial, as you can tell, but I don't really think it's going to open up anything too new for Bardock. As you can tell, it's not like all of a sudden I'm getting links into normal attacks off of this. I think this just generally means it's a little more forgiving for you to cancel into this from DHCs, as well as at some higher hit stun decays. So I can definitely recall a few instances where this super would drop, so basically you couldn't really go into his level 2. But now it should pretty much always work, and if you just want to do Saiyan Spirit into a different super, you should be able to without having to worry about it dropping at any hit stun decay. Bardock's B assist and C assist were buffed, so let's go ahead and take a look at those. They've increased the distance that the B assist will actually move. So, if we back up to full screen with Z Broly, you can tell that Bardock doesn't quite go full screen. It used to have like relatively full screen tracking, but even if you walked a little bit closer, Bardock still had a tendency to whiff. Basically reducing this from like a conversions from all ranges style of assist that it was on its introduction into pretty much a close range mix-up tool assist only. Now let's see how far the B assist will move. Bardock almost lunges across the screen, so even though it still doesn't work at full screen, if you take a few steps closer, it's kind of a decent option for you to use, so there might be some new combo routing you can do with this, but overall it should also mean that you're going to be able to pretty much get into a range and guarantee that the opponent has to block this or do something about it as opposed to having it whiff. So it's not quite back to its glory days of Bardock B, as no Kami would have referenced it as, but it's definitely better. Bardock C assist had its startup sped up, so let's take a look at the old version. 40 frame startup, pretty much in line with some other C assists of this style in the previous patch where it's a vertical tracking assist. So it used to be 40 frame startup. Can you remember what all the other assists were buffed to? If you said 35 frames, you have a good memory. This is pretty much in line with other vertical tracking C assists that we've been keeping track with in the patch. So pretty much, if you want to use one of those assists and you want to play Bardock, well, you're free to do that particular pairing. I would still prefer the B assist for lockdown or the A assist. So where does this leave Bardock? I do feel like these are the first meaningful buffs that he's gotten in terms of actually addressing his weaknesses in years. Yes, Bandai has done a good job of keeping his combo game pretty much up to par with the rest of the cast, and even then in this patch, it's taken yet another leap forward, giving him new utility as a battery on your team. But some of the changes here that are meant to address his neutral, like the Raging Meteor ones, while they are pretty much inspired changes I never would have thought of, I do think that there's some things holding it back, and maybe it's because of the split nature of Raging Meteor. It's a combo tool. It's always been a combo tool for Bardock, and it's been a kind of a cheap mix-up tool just because it is an overhead. But because I think that it is an overhead, it means that its startup is always going to be slower than some other potential anti-projectile moves could be. So honestly, I would not, be at all balked if Bandai chose to remove the overhead property of the move itself just to make it so that these could be faster moves or to give them even better knockdowns. Because as I've been able to demonstrate throughout footage in this video, yes, they do accomplish some things for Bardock. They give him anti-zoning tools that can lead to reward on hit. But the problem is depending on your spacing with them, the knockback that you get is just skewed enough and the hit stun is just low enough to where it's finickier than I would like it to be compared to other characters who have similar tools that are faster than this tool, lead to higher damage than this tool, and are just easier to confirm off of than this tool. Again, Gogeta 4's like Lightning Hammer kind of being my gold standard here. And again, like the changes to the heavy version of Rebellion Spear, it's nice to give him that buff to where it should be a lot more practical for you to convert off of several other assists with this move, which I think I don't mind, but the fact that I can solo confirm off of this, the fact that that is a potential routing option for me, but it's just too finicky enough for me to do it reliably, is something that's going to grind my gears. Like, why is it still so finicky when everyone else has it so much easier? All of these buffs, again, are really good. I'm happy Bardock has gotten these. But I'm afraid that, until some of these things match the quality of life levels of some other newer characters, Bardock is still sort of suffering behind and still suffers from the question of why play Bardock when you can play other characters that do the same things but don't have to sweat as hard to convert off of them. He's just a few changes away, I think, from being a pretty strong pick as a point character. And I do also think that his mix-up game still still is a bit lacking, The idea with his mix-ups, I do think, is something like this, where you kind of create left-right mix-ups using particular assists. So if I put Broly in, for example, I can go for these lariats, and then, I'm left-righting you out of this one. But it just feels a little too finicky still, and I would just prefer, if we remove the landing recovery on this move, let me instantly go into a low, so then I can just high-low 50-50 you. I mean, so many other characters get to do this in mid-screen. Why not just give it to Bardock? He needs an assist to do it anyway. That's a change I would prefer to see, that are making it so that, 2H isn't such a end-all, be-all answer to this style of mix-up, right? You get frame trap right there because of the timing with my assist. So maybe I got to explore this a little bit more. And maybe I've just been looking at the wrong assist pairings for Bardock here. But I do think that, he definitely has a lot of the tools in there. He's got access to super dash, high, low, 50-50. Mid-screen, there's definitely an argument you can make for that he's got left-right mix-up that he can go for instead. That is a bit assist reliant, but I just would like to see some of these ability for him to convert from his neutral hits that are definitely buffed and better to be just a little more streamlined, so that they're not so reliant on, having assist up. But maybe that's just the way that Bardock needs to be. I don't necessarily like it because I feel like there's other point characters who don't have that weakness. Think Jiren, for example. But if this is a state that Bardock's in, at least I feel like it's a playable and fun state that you could actually use and pull up with. I've had my fun playing around with Bardock, but I do definitely feel like he's not as strong as some other of the premier point characters in this patch, and I would like to see him be buffed to be at least comparable to them in terms of his overall solo quality level. I mean, honestly, again, the only two things that I necessarily need from Bardock in this version is just, buff the hit stun on his Raging Meteors. If you gotta give him a nerf to accomplish that, so be it. But making it so that it's more practical to still confirm off of it, regardless of what distance it's hitting from, that's great. And I think something similar for his EX Lariat. If you want to give me more on top of that, like, the change to the medium Tyrant, not Tyrant Lancer, but Rebellion Spear that I just mentioned, or even giving him some semblance of his level 3 Oki back, I would be blown away if we got something like that back. But honestly, just those two small tweaks, and I think Bardock is more than fine and more than playable.